I have a non-food related buffet story, not as a buffet worker, but a customer. I was a kid dining with the family after church as per usual. Well, my dad goes to grab a plate from one of the plate warmers, and he suddenly threw the plate in the air, and it crash landed onto the glass overhang over the food, shattering the glass all into the food. Apparently the plate warmer somehow had busted, and had superheated the plate. My dad got second-degree burns on his fingertips, but 6 of us ate for free, which was nice, because we were pretty poor at the time. The restaurant was so worried about getting sued. They offered vouchers and things, but my dad was a really stand-up guy, and basically said no worries, nobody's fault, it's all good. Also, once I saw a lady go to the salad bar and grab a bowl full of vanilla pudding. I watched her eat all, while I thought to myself that I too would live some pudding. I went to serve some, but up close its texture was off. I tasted a little bit. It was whipped butter. The lady ate a bowl full of butter. It was a little sweet but clearly butter. Yuck. I worked at a buffet for about 4 years, so I feel like this is my time to shine. The buffet I worked at had a chocolate fountain, and half of my time on the clock was spent trying to keep customers from sticking their fingers and other non-food items into the fountain. I distinctly remember one woman with a cast on her arm who came up and started to dip some strawberries into the fountain. Next thing I know, she manages to stick most of her cast under the fountain so that the thing is basically coated with chocolate. Instead of trying to alert a staff member so the fountain could be closed down, sanitized, etc., she proceeded to casually walk back to her table and eat her dessert. I can't even keep track of the number of times we had to close down the chocolate fountain to replace the chocolate that had been contaminated because some idiot thought it would be funny to stick their hand or face into it. This place was also the only establishment that I have ever had to work where the carpets were professionally deep cleaned almost weekly because people would gorge themselves and then vomit on the floors. We also had many customers who would basically shit on walls of the stall rather than in the toilet, so the bathrooms were almost always a nightmare to clean. Many people paid other employees to clean up vomit and other bodily fluids if they didn't have the stomach for it. Don't know if this'll get picked up this late, but my biggest story was at an all-you-can-eat Chinese place. A rather rotund customer arrived and wedged herself into a booth. Besides being a grade A bitch to begin with, she had the gall to request the waitstaff bring her food, since she didn't want to get up from the table and I guess to funnel food into her arteries. I was bussing tables and watching from afar, so I didn't get directly involved. What ensued was utter karma for her being a shitty person to the staff and acting like she owned the place. When she was finished eating, she could not physically get up or get out of her booth, doing her being so stuffed, large in general, and wedged in. I was told by her waiter that the look in her eyes when she had to deprecatingly ask for help was priceless. The manager eventually had to call the fire department to come remove the table from the floor to get her out. All the while she continued complaining and was a terrible customer. Didn't leave a tip either because of poor service or something. I didn't care too much because it's a funny memory that gets me through the week to this day. I was at a Chinese buffet with my family a few months back. This big dude was across from us at a booth with his mom, and he was probably middle-aged or older. Green hair, tank top. You can imagine his smell. I look over and see him with his half-full glass of fountain pop, something orange, I think Fanta, and he proceeds to take the soy sauce bottle and start pouring it into the pop. And not just a drizzle, which would have been odd enough, but he fills up the rest of that cup and stirs it up with his chopstick. What I thought may have just a weird way to waste the restaurant's resources before leaving turned out to be his next meal. He sat there and drank that whole damn thing. It was the weirdest thing I ever saw in a buffet. Edit to say I'm not an employee. Whoops. Asterisk. Worked in a Red Lobster during the all-you-can-eat shrimp bonanza. It was always horrible because the managers sucked and ensured each new dish would take 10 to 15 minutes to come out, so people got tired and left, keeping their food costs down. This meant you'd have tables there for 2+ hours with the same bill and tip you worse since they're cheap and things took too long. Had 3 very large guys come in around 3 PM and start going to town. Plate after plate of fried shrimp. It was insane. They gorged themselves on biscuits dipped in ranch or blue cheese as they waited for the shrimp. Around 7 PM one got up to go to the bathroom. Around 7:20 the ambulance came since he had a heart attack in the bathroom. Also, just in general, the people who think Red Lobster is classy aren't classy people. In a former job, I used to deliver ice cream products, soft serve, cones etc. and many of our customers were Chinese buffets. The kitchens were across the board quite horrifying. It was not uncommon to see raw chicken being broken apart on the floor. Many cooks smoked cigarettes in the kitchen at the shadier ones. Just the smell alone was the most horrifying to me. I had to walk product into the coolers and that was the absolute worst smell wise. I also learned that the labor was more or less slave labor. They would start at the buffets and be lucky to graduate up to a salon, females, or other owner establishments. It's the same old story of we will take you to the US and you just work till you pay us back, which of course never works out as promised. A van load of these poor people arrived every morning and they would walk out like zombies. I have never eaten in a Chinese buffet since. First job was tending the buffet at a Shoney's. I mainly work nights because I was 16. Friday to Sunday we had late night breakfast buffet. Friday and Saturday we were open until 3 AM well past last call. Anyway, at the time, there was also a gigantic Pentecostal revival, the Brownsville revival going on. More than 4 million people from the world over showed up over the course of the years it went on. It had started in 1995, so it was in full swing in 1996, when I was at Shoney's. Church would go on until past midnight on weekend nights. Buses of these holy rolling fundamentalist wackadoos would roll up less than an hour before we closed and wreak fucking havoc. If we had a drunk bar rush and some Brownsville buses, we'd easily be there cleaning until the morning crew showed up at around 5. These assholes were so goddamn rude. You'd think people who had been at a euphoric church meeting for hours would be in a decent mood, but nope. They were shitty. They'd yell at us the second the buffet ran low something. They'd tip servers with chick tracts instead of actual money, and this was the most insane thing, they'd actually fall out and get the spirit in the middle of the restaurant. Yep, flailing around on the floor while loudly laughing, crying, or speaking in tongues. It was a shit show. We weren't even the closest Shoney's. That one would get like 5 buses for every 2 we got. The whole affair was fucking insanity. I once worked in bar where they catered events in a number of ways, one of which was an all-you-can-eat buffet. During one of my shifts, and christening reception was in full swing. We had knowledge already that some of the guests would be late, so we were told to progress the food to the buffet table slowly. We put out several sausage roll platters, sandwich trays and cake plates. Finger food for those already there. The event started at 12 o'clock. At 1400 hours, in walk who I'm going to call Mr. Creosote and Creosote Jr. The wife/mother was already there, and, from outward appearances, Mr. and Jr. didn't look like the sort that had barrels for stomachs. By then, the event room was packed, so we began putting out more of the hot food and platters. I was working drinks from the bar, and so had a good view of both the event room and the main bar room. While cleaning glasses, I see Creosote's Mr. and Jr. piling their plates. Pizza slices, cream buns, cheese and onion sandwiches, spines from the pineapple hedgehog, all of it in a heap on a cardboard plate. Then they disappeared. This happened several times. For at least half the times I saw them, they both had a plate each. Then I look up, and they are sharing a plate. Finally, only Creosote Jr. is walking back from the tables. Now, Creosote Jr. wasn't the only kid there, but he was the oldest. For a while, 2 5-year-old boys were running through the bar and into the beer garden and back. As they're running through, the boy in front is running, shaking his arms above his head in a frenzy as he runs. Meanwhile, Creosote Jr. is now slowly creeping his way up the table, a far cry from his happy strides from earlier. He's just finished piling his next plate of food when it happens. In run the 5-year-olds, who make a beeline for the tables. Creosote Jr. is slightly away from the table. Boy 1, arms swinging, flies around Creosote Jr. and, as he does so, slams a fist the size of a cricket ball into Creosote Jr.'s crotch. It all happened slowly. The boys ran out of the room unaware. The leaning tower of pizza and cheese of Creosote's plate topples over as his hands move to his crotch. He drops to his knees. Mrs. Creosote comes over to him, checking if he's okay as he screams in agony. Creosote Jr. gets this look on his face. He quickly gets up, hand over his mouth and runs for the main bar room. Stumbling, he hits the bar and a loud burp erupts from him, yet his hand still holds his mouth tight. He can't see the sign for the bathroom. He rushes back to the bar and I, sensing it's nearly geyser time, point to the far corner of the room. Too late. A torrent of pineapple chunks, melted cheese, various colored liquids and bread pieces come flying out of his mouth, splashing across the bar. The patrons at the bar scattered. I jumped back. It went everywhere. He drops to the floor, a mixture tears and vomit stains. His mother rushes out. I rush out with a towel and I help him get up before they both go to the bathroom. We had to open the other end of the bar while we cleaned up the vomit. I don't work there anymore, but the smell is still there almost a year later. Edit, spelling and punctuation. Specialty item on rotation on Tuesdays. Worked there for a couple years and never cared enough to truly notice which foods came when. I just wrote out the names on the sneeze guards with some horrid neon marker I hated scrubbing off come closing. I had started as a cashier, but I was good enough and bored enough that I asked for more. Eventually, turnover was high enough that I got to know the district manager and he made me an hourly manager. I could switch positions as needed throughout the restaurant and it kept things interesting. On this one specific Tuesday, I was back on the register. Most of the customers were regulars. I rang up a trio of sheriff's deputies, a family with twin boys that would scream and eventually throw bread rolls, but always cleaned up after themselves, a family with only one kid, but this girl was a spoiled brat who all servers hoped didn't sit in their section, half a grey-haired quartet because, wait, the other Mr. Watch's face died? Man, they'd been coming here for years. And then there's this one big guy who came in a couple times a week. He was quiet and polite, always alone. He sometimes got a taquilla at box and then went on his way. This one particular day, he came in and asked for a to-go box. I provided it, he thanked me and went to go fill it. Customers paid by the pound, so it was something like $5/lb for mixed buffet food, whatever you stuff into it, and $4/lb for only salad. This big guy walked over to the food bars and I went back to cashiering. The restaurant was decorated in such a way that I could watch most of the floor via mirrors and no one was coming in right then, so I kept an eye on things, called for the hot fried chicken to be replaced. Big guy circled the hot bars a few times, then came back to me and said, "There's no chicken livers out. You guys usually have chicken livers today." Using my best customer service voice, I apologized and went to investigate. Came back out to say they could drop some in the fryer for him, but it's going to be X amount of minutes. He said that was fine, and went off to the side to wait. He was getting a little agitated. It's later to say, "I'm sorry, but the chicken livers are frozen. We thought we were out, and found some in the back, but they won't be ready to fry until they're fully thawed. We can make sure to put some out for you tomorrow, if you'd like." That's not good enough. You're supposed to have them today. Angry big man barked and threw the empty to-go container at an unoccupied counter. "I'm very sorry, sir, but," said my manager. He was a bit of an aloof ass, but could be polite and professional enough to keep the place from burning down. "Where's your number for corporate? I want to talk to your boss." "Yes sir, I'll go get that for you." Manager walked off and left me tending the register maybe 3 or 4 yards from this guy. Comes back with the restaurant's own cordless already dialed into corporate. "Here you go, sir. All you have to do is press the green button and it'll call corporate." Angry guy spit out that insulting "Thank you I'm sure many of us have heard before," and walked off into our side banquet room to call. After a few minutes, he was eventually yelling into the phone enough that servers in the rest of the restaurant were coming over to ask me what was going on, or their tables could hear the commotion. Soon enough, I heard their phone conversation winding down with no results angry guy was looking for, so I called manager back to the front. I sure as shit didn't want to get head bitten off. Manager showed up, just as now red-faced angry guy hung up, and he shoved the phone at manager. "Here." Manager, being almost a foot shorter than this big angry white customer, probably a foot less round the middle, and black, backed up. "Thank you, sir, you can put it on the counter. Take the phone. I'm done." He stepped closer to manager and waved the phone again. I'm not certain angry guy was processing English anymore. "Sir, please step back," manager calmly requested, and backed up again. He might have been an ass, but he kept his cool in a way that I still find impressive. "Take the goddamn phone." Angry man shouted and shoved the phone into manager, pushing manager into the counter behind him. The 3 deputies materialized from behind me and tackled the big angry guy to the ground in an amazingly efficient dog pile and quickly hauled him off to step outside. 2 watched angry guy and called for an on-duty car, while the 3rd one came back in to check on manager. On-duty guy arrived soon. They placed angry guy under arrest, took statements. I had to write it all out, that's why I remember it so well, and left. So now there's a guy somewhere around my hometown who's got a record for assault over chicken livers. I was a cook for a grocery co-opus. We had a breakfast and lunch buffet every day. We had one regular who would come and take a bowl. Bowls were 4 grits and oatmeal at a set price. Regular food went in a box and was priced by weight. Put his breakfast food, potatoes, eggs, biscuits and cover it with a thin layer of grits. After a few days of watching him do this, I confronted him at the register and told the cashier to weigh his cup and charge him that. He was not very stoked, but he had realized he had been found out. The very next morning he came in and made a beeline for the coffee, not out of the ordinary for 7 AM, and he grabbed a box. I thought I had struck a chord with him, and he learned a lesson. Fucking nope. He dumps his whole ass cup of coffee in the fresh off the grill pan of scrambled eggs. Somehow he convinced the store manager that it was just an accident. About a week goes by before he makes his return. I see him grab a 12-ounce cup and start squeezing honey into it like it was cool. I walked right over and grabbed that cup out of his hand and walked it into my manager's office and told him to see who done it. He was subsequently banned from the store, trespassed by the police, and had his co-op ownership fees returned. He ran into me and my girlfriend at a local restaurant on the 4th of July. As he was walking in I look up and we make eye contact and I kind of loudly said, "Yo, that's the fucking dickhead with the coffee." He turned around, got in his car, and left. Fuck that guy, and fuck that job. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more daily 6 PM Reddit uploads.